Welcome to another episode of Skin Like a Rhino, a podcast celebrating the awesome women who are leading the charge when it comes to breaking old taboos and new ground. I'm Tanya Bowler, founder and president of LV. There's not many women out there who have leapt from being a professional tennis player and a lawyer to starting a business in online dating and now CBD products. The New York Times said that this was a take-back moment for the internet and young women. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Alexandra Chong, serial entrepreneur, mentor and friend. Alexandra, it's so great to have you here. And well, you've accomplished so much. We're going to be talking today a bit about Lulu and about Jacana. But if we go way back, so Alexandra at 18, what was your sort of life ambition at that point?
Oh my. So when I was 18, I was playing tennis. I was playing professional tennis. I was touring for Jamaica, part of the Jamaican Olympic team. And I was actually also had a scholarship in the US to play tennis. So I was really kind of into the sport, and I don't think I really knew what was going to happen after that. I was sort of very focused in the moment, enjoying being an athlete.
So yeah, completely different to being an entrepreneur, but also quite unusual, right? Being a professional tennis player, then becoming a female founder of two really successful companies. Are there qualities in common, like things that made you a great professional tennis player that also have either, impacted or helped you on the entrepreneurial journey?
Absolutely. I think the most common theme between athletes and entrepreneurs is their hyper competitiveness. I think that desire to succeed and desire to win and accomplish is really that fire that burns in both entrepreneurs and athletes. And I think that there's a lot of similarities, to be honest with you. My experience as a tennis player, fundamentally, while of course, you have to have that physical endurance and physical talent, but in tennis, really, at the end of the day, it comes down to your mental strength. And when you're deep in a third set match, do you have that mental strength to get you through it? Is really the thing that differentiates on the court. And I think that that's the same for entrepreneurs when it's really, really difficult and you've hit a hurdle that's unexpected, which I'd say is an almost guaranteed experience for every entrepreneur. The question is, do you have the grit and the mental stamina to go that extra mile? And I think there's a lot of parallels between the two.
I think, well, I should mention you're obviously my friend and mentor, and I think you did try to warn me. And well, that's part of a role of mentors, right? To try and help people with the shortcuts. And you mentioned disruptive, and both your companies, Lulu and Jacana, have been hugely disruptive. But disruption at its core is about change, right? So I suppose it's about wanting change. What is the change that you wanted with Lulu?
The New York Times were a really, I'd say, awesome piece. And they covered us in our early days. And they said, Lulu's providing this take back the internet moment for women. I think there was this desire to become more empowering, using technology and, reversing the roles, at a time when, and really using the female camaraderie to bring that power together as one kind of group unit of women. And, the vision for Lulu was really about sharing and supporting each other through the various journeys. Now, the first instance was, of course, on dating. And, at a time when, Tinder and mobile phones and, had moved dating from being stigmatized into a normal reality. But yet all those checks and balances that we had when we weren't dating online, i.e. knowing some relation to who the person was that you were about to go on a date with, you knew, they were either in your class or a friend of a friend or a family member, or, you met them at a social club. But then, that concept of meeting someone online on the app totally changed that reality. You lost your reference point. And really, Lulu was about bringing that power back to the woman and to the individual, which was a lot around safety and security as well. But trying to do that in a way that wasn't super alienating for men. So that was obviously a super big challenge, but ultimately it was about female empowerment, and it was about female security. And it was something that I, as a woman in my 20s at the time, definitely needed.
And you mentioned female camaraderie, and I think that's such an important thing, right? Because I mean, I'm generalizing here a little bit, but men, the conversations, the decisions that get made on the golf course or down the pub or so on, and there isn't that sense that we have that sort of women's network. Is that part of what you're trying to build, which I suppose goes beyond dating, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was giving ourselves a space digitally. And at the early onset of Lulu, when it was Lulu Vise and we were building a website, it was really, I had lived a pretty global life by then. I was living in London, but I had friends all over the world. And those girlfriends for me were, they were really so important. They helped me make decisions. They helped me navigate difficult times. They helped me celebrate wonderful moments. And I didn't feel that Facebook gave me a safe space for that. And that was kind of, really the inception of Lulu, right? Was this safe space for me in my private circle of girlfriends that I kind of used, as my core network, to guide me through life. But then realizing that, there are, millions of other women that have a lot to share, right? They have their experiences to share. And what if we can just bring them all into that same network together, where they're not just in their own circle, their own inner circle, but then they can get access to a broader network of advice.
You identified sort of a need that you as a 20-something-year-old Alexandra had, and you're obviously spot on, because Lulu went absolutely viral, didn't it? I think at one point, was it 1 in 4 college students was using it in the US, and that obviously precipitated you then moving to the US, and a huge sort of incredible journey. I mean, looking back at your time at Lulu, what were some of sort of your key lessons? And I think particularly for people listening who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, what are some of your most important tips or learnings?
Well, I always say that, you've got to think of the whole journey. You got to be clear that you want to see whatever it is that you're thinking about creating, starting, or building, come to life with a burning, deep desire. And then once you're very clear on that, you've just got to jump out of the plane, right, and build your parachute as you're flying down. It's that the jumping into the unknown is part of the journey of an entrepreneur, and I think saddling up and being prepared for that is one of the very first steps. What I've learned in my experience is team is really a big part. I think that early on I felt like, human resources and HR was always a little bit under emphasized as an important element. And yet, and you and I both know this, like, we are only as strong as our team is. And, we can't build everything. We need to galvanize people around our vision and our desire to see something come to reality. But have those strong strengths of different areas around us to make it happen. And I think that is ever important in Jacana today, as it was for Lulu. My work with Allison and Hassan and Deborah, and just an incredible group of people that helped make Lulu the success that it was. And that transfers to where I am today. My co-founders, my husband, Jack, and, we've got an incredible team around us, and it's just really, it also makes it fun, right? We also have a no asshole policy, like working with people that you spend probably more time with than you do with your own family. You want to enjoy that. You want to work hard and then enjoy that experience and have those laughs and celebrations together with people that you like.
Yeah, we say low ego at LV, but I suppose that means definitely no assholes.
Not assholes.
But also, obviously, you've raised a lot of money. You've had to raise money, being a female founder, even say with Lulu on a female-focused issue, or even now in Jacana on issues which are not necessarily sort of obvious to investors. I mean, starting maybe just being a female entrepreneur, to what extent do you feel that has been an advantage or disadvantage, and how have you dealt with that?
I think it's funny. Like, I would say that overwhelmingly, I felt that it has been an advantage. I think that in many instances, and unfortunately, I think it is still true today, where, being a female, you're a little bit underestimated. And I think that there's a lot of power when people underestimate you, and to be leveraged for sure. But I also do think that, it is still a mostly male dominated world. I think there's a lot of change happening for sure. I think women are tougher on women, to be honest, in many instances, right? Like, I think that they're a little tougher on each other. So it's been like really a mixed bag. I've never felt, I feel a little bit different now, funny enough, like working in another male dominated industry in like in the CBD medical cannabis space, which is what I'm in now, which is heavily male dominated. I do feel that it is, and especially in my home country, Jamaica, I do feel that there are more instances where let's just say it's less, trying to find the appropriate word here. It's just less kind of
progressive or less equal.
Progressive, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's less progressive, and I definitely noticed that, which does make it more challenging. And I think that a woman who's had very little experience starting a company versus a man, I can see where it's more challenging, right? I feel like we have a lot more to prove in the early instances.
And I think I've also had similar experiences at LV. I think you turn that disadvantage, the stereotypes that male investors might have on you, you turn them on their head and you prove them wrong, and that can be very powerful. But I also think probably for our businesses, it's quite binary. Like, I'd always find that a lot of men or investors wouldn't want to have an investment meeting with us early days until we'd proven ourselves. Those who know that we're focusing on helping women. So they've already sort of self-selected in, right? But I do remember once, Alexandra, you told me, was it in Silicon Valley, and somebody was just asking you about playing tennis or something? Wasn't that some...
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, there were a lot of interesting experiences in raising capital over the years. I mean, I remember very early on, myself and my co-founder, Ali, and I were in Silicon Valley. We were on Sandhill Road, the famous road, and, pitch after pitch, it was rooms of men, and they'd stop and they'd go, we don't really understand. And they would ask for a secretary to come in from outside. Could you just come in, ladies, and just hear the pitch? And I just would think, wow, like, amazing that they're going to leave this up to, like, the PAs and the secretaries to think about, how to make an investment in this company. Like, it just was baffling to me at the time. And it was very clear, like, okay, well, maybe you should really think about more diversity on your investment group. So that was always interesting. And then, yeah, I mean, I remember one investor, the only questions he asked, he was a very well-known Silicon Valley investor. And he just said, he just wanted to talk about my tennis career. And he just wanted to talk, really, I think it was probably all of 10 minutes before he said he was going to give us $2 million. And he literally just said, tell me how you think in the first set, tell me how you think in the second set, and, like, what happens if you go to a third set. And he just wanted to know, like, how my brain thinks when, I'm up, down, and sideways, I guess. And I think that that was, that was also really interesting to kind of get a sense as to what people were looking for, if you will.
It's probably quite a good test, right? As you know, like, resilience is so important as an entrepreneur. When did you realize that you had skin like a rhino?
I think I realized I had skin like a rhino, really early on, probably in my tennis life, right? When, I had to find the grit, for sure. And then as an entrepreneur, definitely in the early days of, like, raising money and getting lots of no's, right? As well, eventually the yeses come. But those are the moments the toughest moments, right? The toughest moments are when you learn that you have skin like a rhino. And it doesn't mean that skin necessarily it goes away, right? Like, that rhino strong skin, you're going to need it through the whole experience. But you get wiser over time.
So just switching gear just a tiny bit, well, I'd love to just talk a bit about Jacana. talk me through, your story of, well, how you went home to Jamaica and why. And you and I've been to Jamaica and I've visited Jacana. I've met your team. They're just so wonderful. They're so impassioned. And I know for you that impact part, particularly the going back to Jamaica and helping educate and the community there is a big part of what you're doing now as well. So I'd love to just hear a bit more about that.
After I sold Lulu and I'd had my first child, I was kind of going on a bit of an exploration journey around the world. And the world started to come out of prohibition, and medical cannabis and cannabinoids and, plant medicine started to become, really recognized for the value that it has always had in human life. But due to unfortunate circumstances of really misinformation and poor propaganda in the 1920s, it went into prohibition. But through science research and through, frankly, like application for some patients, especially young children with terrible epilepsy, the magic of the plant was shining once again. And so, the United States obviously started to legalize on a state-by-state basis and around the world. And Jamaica's always had that very deep consumer association with the plant. And really, like, I started, looking at who was doing what on the island, how could I be involved? I very much, for me, I've always felt that there's a huge amount of value in plant medicine and wellness. And I think coming out of the pandemic, I think we're all very, we're very health conscious now, right? We're really, our health was directly impacted, and there was a shakeup in the world. And there is definitely a rejection of synthetics and pharmaceuticals. And, we're looking for organic and more natural products to consume in our bodies. And so, all of that coming home kind of really reignited a lot of my personal feelings around wellness and plant medicine, my desire to be in Jamaica, my desire to, help build something within my community here. And really that was the sort of impetus to start Jacana, was to, bring, fantastic plant medicine to the world, and do it from a place that, was really important to me. And coming back home was really special. So, we are very much, on that journey, and it's been super challenging, right? Because it's a brand new industry, lots of regulation, being again super disruptive because there's stigma, but also every time I get an email or a note from a customer that says, you've completely taken away my pain, or I couldn't sleep and now I can get a really great night's sleep, that it makes it worth it. And knowing that in doing that and helping others, we're also helping our communities, right? Providing jobs to rural communities in the hills of St. Anne, helping the Jamaican economy. I mean, just so much of that is the why, which gets me through the difficult challenges when they come up, because as I said, they always do.
So those who are listening today then, in terms of the medicinal benefits of cannabis or CBD, will you just give us a sort of quick overview? Because to your point, I think there's still a lot of ignorance and even stigma.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's changing, but of course, there is a lot of stigma because we've been living in it, right? And it's certainly a generational change. I think the generations, behind you and I, Tanya, are, a lot more clued in and a lot more open-minded. But the reality is that, cannabis was used by Queen Victoria for her menstrual cramps, right? Like, it was always a medicine, an Eastern medicine, then a Western medicine, primarily used to help with pain. So there's so many specific conditions that cannabis cannabinoids, which are the medicinal compounds, of which now we know there's 140 plus. The ones that are most common are THC and CBD. One obviously does have a psychoactive element and has to be more regulated and controlled, and CBD, which helps with inflammation. But the main use cases are to help with pain, right? So those who are suffering from pain and really, again, don't want to be on opioids, because we know that opioids kill. And obviously cannabis is used to help people get off opioids. So chronic pain sufferers, but also like our star product is our CBD balm, our wellness balm, to be used as a topical. Again, kind of maybe going back to athletes, but really, really powerful product with it for inflammation. And then we have a tincture, and that's obviously a great, well, the uses there are really around sleep, right? Sleep and stress and anxiety, to really help with like calming the mind, relaxing the body to enter into great sleep, because we know how important sleep is. So Jacana is a wellness company. Again, I'm super passionate about it because I really believe in wellness, and I've said this to you before, Tanya, like, as you get older as an entrepreneur, as I became a mom of 2 kids, the biggest challenge for me, it was not having the energy I had in my 20s, and making sure that my health was of like high standard, right? Because without health, you can't really be there, right? For your business and for your family and your team. So, wellness is a really important part of my life now. Meditation, mindfulness, as well as, incorporating plant medicine and foods. It's something I'm really, really passionate about now. And I really believe in this particular space.
Am I right in understanding, because obviously CBD is, you don't have the THC, right? So it's not the psychoactive bit. So for those who are listening who maybe haven't tried it, the sense is obviously most of your products are CBD. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have an entire wellness line, which we're launching in the US this month, so this February, into February 2023, and then hopefully into the UK by the summer, and the rest of Europe. But that wellness line, again, yes, it doesn't have THC inside, so it's really meant to help with inflammation, and to support natural sleep cycles and other things. But there are 140 different medicinal compounds in the cannabis plant. All of them have different beneficial effects. And so really it's about, encouraging everybody to go and do their research. You're not going to get high using a CBD balm to help with, a neck pain. Absolutely not. And I think there's a lot more education around there that's coming out about the plant. And again, as I said, it's a generational shift, right?
And you've said wellness is a really important thing for you. I mean, the wellness industry is growing and forever seems to be expanding. Like, what are the things that excite you the most about what's happening within that sector? And what role do you see for plant medicine within that?
So I think that, there's many facets to wellness. I think that the mental health space is obviously massive. And in that space, mushrooms is becoming a really interesting addition to plant medicine. Fungi, fantastic fungi. We're, helping with PTSD and depression and lots of other mental health challenges. So that's an interesting area that we're really exploring, because psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in mushrooms that does have a psychoactive element, is actually legal in Jamaica. So we're exploring things in that particular category. And then there's just some other really amazing kind of what you'd imagine as run-of-the-mill plants, like ginger and turmeric and guinea hen weed. And again, like, if those products are, really taking the full plant and bottling it in the most pure way, then the medicinal value is so much more powerful for the end consumer. And so that's how we've been thinking about it. So more and more, because I think there's this drive to, scale and be more economical and cut corners and produce things from synthetics. But I think plant medicine and wellness is always being about as natural. And if that also means a bit more minimal, then that's also equally as important. So I think both. And then there's this whole other world around food. I'm super fascinated with food, and how food affects us. I think food is one of the number one causes of most diseases that kill people today. There's an incredible book by Dr. William Lee called Eat to Beat Disease. And, what we put in our bodies contributes to so much about, we are what we eat, right? And again, whether, I think health and wellness is one of the most important things in our lives and can't be taken for granted.
Just last question on the plant medicine, because as you pointed out about turmeric and so on, like absorption rates can really vary and quality. But, people listening, they're spending, myself included, we can spend a fortune on supplements. And yet sometimes these studies seem to come out and show that they're not effective. I mean, you're an expert, so it's easier for you to be able to distinguish. But what advice would you give to people who, want to look after their bodies, want to use more natural substances, but don't really know how to?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you're right. It's expensive, right? The really good, high quality, high bioavailability supplements are expensive. And I think if you're on a budget, you're better off probably, getting your own little veggie patch indoors and growing certain herbs and certain herbs and
but not cannabis, because that's not legal in the UK or US, I don't think. Just we're not endorsing that right now.
Herbs, other herbs like mint and things like that. But you can also just buy at the supermarket your own ginger and press it, right?
Yeah.
So trying to be as natural as possible, depending on your budget. But really like looking after ourselves, right? Like that cannot be underestimated. I would think to myself, especially when I was much younger, I don't need to go do that workout today because I got to get up and like get straight onto the computer and like look at this contract or whatever. When I was lucky enough to meet Barack Obama, and one of the things he said to me was that without fail, he and Michelle, they worked out every day. There wasn't a day that they didn't look after themselves. And I remember thinking to myself, God, if the president of the United States can make time to work out every day, then why can I not make that time? And so, it was very clear, like putting his health first meant that he could be the best president that he could be. And, and I think that goes for all female and male entrepreneurs and just human beings, right? Look after yourself because the best version of you will come out in the best way and you'll be able to tackle the world.
Are you living by that value? Because it's tough, right? You're also a parent. I mean, that's one thing I want to talk about. Like you're an entrepreneur and you're a parent, and then looking after yourself is sometimes there's not enough hours in the day, are there?
Well, Tanya, you caught me very early this morning. It's really tough. I have 2 young kids. I'm told I'm like right in the deep end, so be kind to myself. But my husband got me a treadmill for Christmas, so it's right outside on our terrace. And even if I jump on that for 15 minutes, I feel a little bit better. So I'm certainly, one thing I am doing, I meditate every day. I do eat really well. And I'm getting out on the tennis court as much as I can as well.
Yeah, no, definitely be kind to yourself. I mean, I had a reformer Pilates booked in this morning and I had to cancel it. So we try.
Yes.
But what about parenthood? I mean, that has been I knew you before you became a parent. Now you're a parent. Like it's been a huge change, hasn't it? And how have you managed to balance that with being an entrepreneur?
I have to say that, when I was, and even just being married, right? Like, when I was a single woman building a company and that was all I was focused on, it was a lot easier, I have to say. Like, even though I'm a more experienced entrepreneur today, I have a lot more distractions, right? Like I have my kids and, they're the first thing that gets my attention in the morning. And, again, with age, I've had to really think about myself more, and of course, a husband. And so, there are other people to think about, which, there's only so much time in a day, but it also means that I don't waste time at work. Right. And that was actually something I learned. I had a really awesome product, manager, in London, and she was so focused at work. Like she'd come in, she had a child, and she was like, "Look, I'm not going to stay here all night with you guys, like testing the app." But the time that she was in the office, she was like a rock star. She would just nail it out because she knew she had to leave. She had to go to be here with her family. So there was no wasting time. So you're a lot more efficient with your time, that's for sure, because your time is less. And you get straight to the point because, I think I don't know how you feel about this, Tanya, but one of the hardest lessons for me is learning to say no. to really cool side projects within our business. And that was the same at Lulu. But really keeping everybody focused, and that discipline is more important now that I have a family than it was before.
So in those tough moments, what is it that gets you through?
In the hardest moments, it's this desire to finish the job, right? To see what I like in the case of Lulu was to ensure that women had the ability to share their experiences, whether good or bad, and make better informed decisions and make that a reality. In the case of Jacana, it's to see, Jamaican CBD and cannabis products all around the world of the highest quality. And I think that until that moment in time, you just keep fighting, right? You keep wanting it and willing it to happen. And you have lots of small wins along the way. But you just keep that resilience going because you personally want it. And that's for me is I personally want to see it become a reality.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy to talk to you. And I'm just so proud of everything you're doing and just so happy and grateful that you are my friend and mentor as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tanya. Bye.